The autumn sun streamed through the glass doors of Value Mart as Maya pushed her shopping cart inside. At 8 months pregnant, even the simple task of getting from the car to the store entrance left her slightly winded. She paused just past the sliding doors, one hand resting on her swollen belly as she caught her breath and adjusted her purse strap on her shoulder. "Just a few more weeks, little one," she whispered, feeling a gentle kick in response. Maya smiled and pulled out her phone to check the shopping list she'd carefully prepared. This was her first baby, and she wanted everything to be perfect. The store buzzed with mid-morning activity. An elderly couple examined cereal boxes with intense concentration. A tired-looking dad tried to corral 2 energetic toddlers while checking prices on diapers. Overhead speakers played forgettable music, interrupted occasionally by announcements about special offers in various departments. Maya moved carefully through the aisles, consulting her list and adding items to her cart. Soft yellow onesies, a package of newborn diapers, baby lotion that promised to be gentle on sensitive skin, a set of bottles with natural flow nipples. Each item represented another step in her preparation for motherhood. And despite her aching back and swollen ankles, she couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. After 45 minutes of methodical shopping, Maya had collected everything on her list. She also picked up a few items that weren't planned, a tiny stuffed elephant with floppy ears that seemed to call out to her, and a book about a mother's love that made her eyes well up when she flipped through it in the book section. As she pushed her now heavy cart toward the front of the store, Maya remembered something important. She and her husband had talked about setting up a baby registry. Several of their friends had asked where they were registered, and Maya had promised to take care of it this week. She'd read online that Value Mart had a good registry program with a completion discount for any items not purchased by others. Instead of heading straight to checkout, Maya steered her cart toward the customer service desk. A sign overhead confirmed that this was where registry services were handled. 2 employees worked behind the counter, a young woman with curly hair who was helping an older customer with what looked like a return, and a man in his 40s who sat at a computer terminal. The man wore a name tag that identified him as Trevor W. and had assistant manager printed beneath his name. Maya waited patiently, glancing at her watch. Her husband James would be done with his morning hospital rounds soon, and had texted that he might join her at the store if he finished early enough. The older customer finished her transaction and walked away, and the young woman with curly hair turned to help another person who had just walked up. Maya rolled her cart to the section of the counter where Trevor sat. He continued typing on his keyboard, not looking up despite Maya standing directly in front of him. "Excuse me," Maya said politely. "I'd like some information about your baby registry program." Trevor's fingers paused on the keyboard, but his eyes remained fixed on the screen. He sighed audibly before finally looking up. His gaze swept over Maya briefly, lingering for a moment on her pregnant belly before moving to her face. "Registry's online," he said flatly. "You can do it yourself at home." The abruptness of his response caught Maya off guard. "Oh, I understand that's an option," she replied, maintaining her friendly tone. "But I read that you can also set one up in-store with assistance, and there are some benefits to doing it that way. I have a few questions about how it works." Trevor leaned back in his chair, his expression impassive. "It's pretty straightforward. Not complicated." Maya nodded, still smiling despite the coolness of his response. "I'm sure it is. But since this is my first baby, I want to make sure I understand everything correctly. Do you have a brochure or something that explains the process?" With evident reluctance, Trevor reached under the counter and pulled out a folded pamphlet. He slid it across the counter toward Maya without a word. "Thank you," Maya said, picking up the brochure. She opened it and quickly scanned the contents. "This is helpful, but I was wondering if you could tell me about the completion discount. It mentions it here but doesn't explain how it works." Trevor shifted in his seat, glancing past Maya as if hoping someone else would take over. "You get 10% off items on your registry that nobody buys for you. You have to complete some form online after your event date." "I see," Maya said, sensing his impatience but pressing on. "And how long does the registry stay active after the baby is born?" 6 months, Trevor replied, his tone growing more clipped. "Look, all this information is in the pamphlet or on our website. There's really no need to take up counter time with these questions." Maya felt a flicker of discomfort at his dismissive attitude, but reminded herself that everyone had bad days. "I understand. Just one more question. Can I start the registry today and add more items later?" Trevor's jaw tightened visibly. Yes, he said. Then under his breath but still audible, he added, why do certain people always expect special hand-holding for everything? The comment hung in the air between them. Maya's smile faltered as she processed what she'd just heard, and the implication behind it. She looked more closely at Trevor, noting the way he avoided direct eye contact with her, the thinly disguised annoyance in his expression. I'm sorry, Maya said carefully. What do you mean by certain people? Trevor straightened papers on his desk, his movements sharp and agitated. Nothing. Just busy today. Lots of customers needing help. Maya glanced around. The customer service area wasn't particularly busy. The young woman with curly hair had finished with her customer and was now organizing something behind the counter. No one else was waiting. I don't think I'm taking up too much time with my questions, Maya said, her voice steady despite the uncomfortable feeling growing in her chest. I'm just trying to understand your registry program before I sign up. Trevor looked past her again, then back at his computer screen. Like I said, it's all in the pamphlet. If you need someone to explain every little detail to you, maybe you should come back when you have more time, or when we're not so busy. Maya placed both hands on the counter, partly to steady herself and partly to establish her presence that Trevor seemed so eager to dismiss. I have time now and it doesn't seem very busy. I'd appreciate it if you could answer my questions or perhaps ask your colleague to help me if you're working on something else. At this, Trevor finally looked directly at Maya, his expression hardening. Look, these registry questions take time. There are forms to fill out, explanations to give. I can see you've got a cart full of stuff already. Why don't you just pay for that and worry about the registry another day? Maya felt the baby kick sharply as if responding to the tension in her body. She took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. She'd encountered dismissive service before, but something about Trevor's attitude felt different, more personal, more pointed. I'd like to speak with someone else, please, Maya said, her voice quieter but firm. Trevor's eyes narrowed. Everyone's got the same information, and everyone's just as busy as I am. He glanced meaningfully at her cart again. How about you just focus on what you came for today? Those items in your cart probably add up to quite a bill already. The implication was clear, and Maya felt heat rise to her face, not from embarrassment, but from a growing anger. She'd come to the store in a good mood, excited about preparing for her baby. Now she stood facing a man who seemed determined to make assumptions about her based on nothing but her appearance. A few other customers had begun to notice the interaction. An older woman nearby slowed her pace, glancing between Maya and Trevor with a concerned expression. A young man stocking shelves a few feet away had stopped his work, pretending to organize products while clearly listening. Maya straightened her shoulders and looked Trevor directly in the eyes. I'd like to speak with the store manager, please. Trevor's mouth curved in what might have been a smile but held no warmth. I am the assistant manager. The store manager isn't available right now. When will they be available? Maya asked. Hard to say. Very busy schedule. Trevor turned back to his computer. Like I said, you can read the pamphlet, or come back another time when things aren't so hectic. Maya stood her ground, one hand protectively cupping her belly. She thought about leaving, about walking away from this increasingly uncomfortable situation, but something inside her refused to be dismissed so easily. She'd done nothing to deserve this treatment. She'd been polite, patient, and reasonable, and she had every right to be here, asking legitimate questions about a service the store offered. She reached for her phone, planning to call her husband. James had mentioned he might join her at the store. Perhaps he was already in the parking lot. Maya's fingers hovered over her phone screen, ready to call James, when the young woman with curly hair approached Trevor's station. Everything okay over here? She asked, looking between Trevor and Maya with a slightly concerned expression. Her name tag read Lily. Before Maya could respond, Trevor waved his hand dismissively. Just explaining to this customer that registry setup takes time we don't have right now. I suggested she come back when we're not so busy. Lily glanced around the nearly empty customer service area, confusion crossing her face. I can help with a registry setup. I just finished with my last customer. Trevor's jaw tightened. I've got it handled, Lily. Don't you have returns to process? Lily hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the tension she'd walked into. Returns are caught up for now, she said carefully. Maya saw an opportunity. I'd be happy to work with Lily on setting up my registry, she said. offering the young woman a grateful smile. Trevor's chair scraped loudly against the floor as he stood up suddenly. "I said I've got it handled," he snapped at Lily, who took a small step back. He then turned to Maya, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Look, I don't have time for this today. Some people think every little thing is a big production that requires special attention." The emphasis he placed on "some people" made Maya's skin prickle. The implication was impossible to miss. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Maya asked, her voice steady despite the quickening of her heartbeat. Trevor folded his arms across his chest. "I think you know exactly what I mean. We get your type in here all the time, making demands, expecting royal treatment." Lily's eyes widened. "Trevor, I don't think... Go stock the gift card display." "Lily..." Trevor cut her off without looking away from Maya. "Now." Lily looked at Maya apologetically before reluctantly walking away, though she didn't go far, just far enough to appear to be following orders while still keeping an eye on the situation. Maya took a deep breath, her hand instinctively moving to her belly as if to protect her unborn child from Trevor's words. "My type?" she repeated, wanting him to be explicit, to leave no room for later denial about what was happening. Trevor leaned slightly forward. "Yeah, coming in here with your designer purse and your fancy phone, acting like you own the place. Expecting everyone to drop everything and cater to your every little question." His eyes flicked down to her pregnant belly. "Probably don't even know who the father is." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She actually took a step back, one hand gripping the shopping cart for support. The quiet hum of the store seemed to fade away as blood rushed in her ears. She'd experienced subtle racism before. The security guard who followed her a little too closely in high-end stores. The people who seemed surprised by her articulate speech. The backhanded compliments about being different from what they expected. But this was blatant, ugly, and unmistakable. Several shoppers nearby had stopped pretending not to notice. An elderly woman with a cart full of groceries stared openly, her mouth slightly agape. A middle-aged man in a business suit shook his head in disbelief. Lily had abandoned all pretense of stocking gift cards and was now pulling out her phone, her expression a mix of shock and determination. Maya realized her hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from anger, a deep, righteous anger that burned through her initial shock. She reached into her purse and pulled out her own phone, quickly opening the camera app and switching it to video mode. "What are you doing?" Trevor demanded, noticing the phone in her hand. "Making sure there's a record of this interaction," Maya replied, her voice stronger now. She held the phone steady, framing Trevor in the shot. "Please repeat what you just said about my type and not knowing who my baby's father is." Trevor's expression shifted from contemptuous to wary. "Put that away. You can't record me without permission. Actually, in this state, I can record in a public place where there's no expectation of privacy," Maya replied calmly. "Now, you were saying something about my type and making assumptions about my baby's father?" Trevor glanced around, suddenly aware of the growing audience. "I didn't say anything like that." "You're twisting my words." "Then what did you mean by your type?" Maya pressed, keeping the camera steady. "I just meant customers who ask a lot of questions," Trevor muttered, his earlier boldness fading. "Really? Because it sounded like you were making assumptions based on the color of my skin," Maya said, "and suggesting I don't know who my baby's father is. What made you think that was appropriate?" A few murmurs of agreement came from the small crowd that had gathered. An older black woman stepped closer to Maya, positioning herself almost protectively at her side. "I heard what he said, honey," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. Clear as day, Trevor's face flushed red. "This is ridiculous. You're creating a scene over nothing." "Over nothing?" Maya repeated, her voice rising slightly. "You refused to help me, suggested I couldn't afford the items in my cart, and made a disgusting comment about my baby's father. And you think that's nothing?" Trevor's eyes darted around, looking for an escape route. Finding none, he attempted to regain control of the situation. "Look, you're clearly upset and probably misunderstood what I was saying. Pregnancy hormones can do that, make women emotional and confused." A collective intake of breath came from the onlookers. Maya almost laughed at the absurdity of his attempt to gaslight her while digging himself deeper. "I'm recording this, remember?" Maya said, tapping her phone screen. "Every word. And I'm neither emotional nor confused. I know exactly what's happening here." Trevor's face hardened again. "Fine, you want to make a big deal out of this? Go ahead. But you need to take that card and leave the store now. You're disrupting business." I'm disrupting business? Maya looked pointedly around at the other customers who had stopped to watch. I came in to shop and ask about a registry. You're the one who turned this into a situation. As assistant manager, I have the right to refuse service to disruptive customers, Trevor said, reaching for a phone on the counter. If you don't leave now, I'll call security and have you escorted out. The older woman beside Maya made a sound of disgust. That's how it always goes, she said. We're disruptive for standing up for ourselves. Maya kept filming but addressed the older woman without looking away from Trevor. Thank you for your support, ma'am. I appreciate it. Trevor picked up the phone and dialed an internal number. Security to customer service, please. Disruptive customer. Maya felt a mixture of emotions, anger, humiliation, exhaustion, but she refused to let any of them show on her face. She would not give Trevor the satisfaction of seeing her upset. Instead, she turned to the small crowd that had gathered. I came in today to buy baby supplies and set up a registry, she explained calmly. This employee refused to help me, made assumptions about my ability to pay, and then made a racist comment about my baby's father. Now he's calling security because I dared to stand up for myself and record his behavior. Several people nodded in understanding. Lily, who had been standing nearby, finally stepped forward. Trevor, this is wrong, she said, her voice trembling slightly but determined. I'm going to call Mr. Reynolds. She reached for another phone on the counter. Don't you dare, Trevor hissed at her. This isn't your business, Lily. It's very much my business when you treat a customer this way, Lily replied, already dialing. It goes against everything in our training. Trevor lunged for the phone in Lily's hand, but she stepped back quickly, turning away to protect the receiver. Maya continued recording, capturing Trevor's increasingly erratic behavior. A security guard appeared at the edge of the customer service area, taking in the scene with confusion. What's going on here? He asked, looking between Trevor and the gathering of customers. This woman is causing a disturbance and needs to be removed from the store, Trevor said immediately, pointing at Maya, the security guard. A middle-aged man with a calm demeanor looked at Maya, clearly pregnant and still filming with her phone, then at the supportive customers around her, then back at the clearly agitated Trevor. Ma'am, what's your side of this? He asked Maya directly, ignoring Trevor's attempt to interrupt. I'm happy to explain, Maya said, keeping her composure. And I have most of it recorded, including this employee's racist comments about me and my unborn child. The security guard's expression grew more serious. I see, and you have witnesses? He glanced at the gathered customers. Before anyone could respond, Trevor slammed his hand on the counter. This is ridiculous. She's playing the race card to get special treatment. I want her out of this store now. The outburst hung in the air, captured perfectly on Maya's phone. Even the security guard looked taken aback by Trevor's loss of control. Maya took a deep breath, one hand resting protectively on her belly. My husband will be here any minute, she said, her voice steady. He's just parking the car. I'd prefer to wait for him before we take this any further. At the mention of her husband, Trevor scoffed. Oh, so there is a father in the picture. Is he actually coming, or is that just a convenient excuse? A collective gasp went up from the onlookers. Maya's finger hovered over the stop button on her recording. She had more than enough evidence now, but decided to keep it running just a little longer. Yes, Trevor, she said, deliberately using his name while looking directly into the camera. My husband is coming, and I think you'll find this conversation goes very differently when he arrives. The security guard shifted uncomfortably, clearly caught between following Trevor's directive and responding to the obvious tension in the air. He glanced at Maya's phone, still recording, then at the supportive crowd of customers who had gathered. Look, he said carefully, why don't we all take a step back and calm down? Ma'am, maybe you could stop recording so we can talk this through. Maya shook her head slightly. I'm sorry, but I need to document what's happening here. I came in to shop and set up a baby registry. That's all. I've been spoken to disrespectfully and had assumptions made about me based on my race. I'm not the one who needs to calm down. The security guard, his name tag read Paul, nodded slowly. I understand. Trevor, he turned to the assistant manager. Perhaps we should call Mr. Reynolds down to help resolve this. Trevor's face flushed darker. Reynolds isn't available. I'm handling this. He pointed at Maya again. This woman is disrupting our business and needs to leave. I'll leave, Maya said calmly, after I've paid for my items. She gestured to her cart, still full of baby supplies. A flash of something, triumph perhaps, crossed Trevor's face. Fine, let's ring you up then. He moved from behind the customer service counter to a nearby register, gesturing impatiently for Maya to follow. Maya hesitated. She didn't trust Trevor to handle her transaction fairly, but she also didn't want to leave without the items she'd spent time selecting for her baby. She decided to proceed cautiously, still recording with her phone in one hand as she pushed her cart to the register with the other. Lily, the young employee, quickly stepped in. "I can help ring these up," she offered. "No," Trevor snapped. "I said I've got it." He began scanning Maya's items with jerky movements, practically throwing them into bags. "Can't even bag your own groceries," he muttered, just loud enough for Maya to hear. The older woman who had stood beside Maya earlier hadn't left. "I'll help you with those bags, honey," she said, moving to the end of the counter where Trevor was haphazardly piling Maya's purchases. Trevor ignored her, continuing to scan items roughly. When he reached the soft yellow onesies Maya had selected, he paused. "These are pretty expensive for what they are," he said loudly. "We have cheaper ones, you know. Store brand." "I'm aware," Maya replied evenly. "I chose these specifically for their organic cotton. My baby has a family history of sensitive skin." Trevor made a dismissive sound and continued scanning. When he finished, he announced the total with a hint of satisfaction in his voice, as if the high amount somehow proved his point about Maya. "That will be $342.87, he said, emphasizing each digit. Maya nodded calmly and reached into her purse for her wallet. She pulled out a credit card and handed it to Trevor. Trevor made a show of examining the card, turning it over and squinting at it suspiciously. "This doesn't look right," he said. Maya blinked in surprise. "What do you mean?" "It's a standard credit card." "The hologram looks off," Trevor insisted. "And the name?" He trailed off, looking from the card to Maya with exaggerated doubt. Maya's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. "The name on that card is mine. Maya Johnson. It's a perfectly valid card." Trevor held the card up as if studying it under the light. "Johnson, huh? That's your last name?" "Yes," Maya confirmed, aware that every word of this exchange was still being recorded on her phone. "Funny you don't look like a Johnson," Trevor said with a smirk. "That's not typically a—" He let the implication hang in the air. The security guard stepped closer. "Trevor, just run the card." Trevor shrugged and inserted Maya's card into the reader with exaggerated reluctance. When the terminal prompted for a PIN, Maya entered it carefully, conscious of Trevor watching her fingers as if expecting her to make a mistake. The terminal processed for a moment, then beeped. Trevor's eyebrows shot up in what appeared to be genuine surprise when the screen displayed "approved." "Huh," he said. "It went through." "Of course it did," Maya replied. "As I said, it's a valid card." Trevor seemed disappointed but quickly recovered. "I still need to see some ID," he demanded. "Store policy for purchases over $200. Paul, the security guard, frowned. "That's not our policy, Trevor." "It is when there's suspicion of fraud," Trevor insisted. Maya had had enough. Without arguing, she reached into her wallet again and pulled out her driver's license, holding it up for Trevor to see without actually handing it over. Trevor leaned forward, scrutinizing the ID. His eyes widened slightly when he read the information. "Dr. Maya Johnson?" He read aloud, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. "Yes," Maya confirmed simply. "You're a doctor?" Trevor's tone was disbelieving. "I am," Maya said. "I'm a pediatric neurologist at Mercy Hospital." She hadn't wanted to bring up her credentials. They shouldn't matter in how she was treated. But seeing Trevor's reaction gave her a small sense of satisfaction. The older woman who had been helping bag Maya's items chuckled. "Bet you feel foolish now, young man." Trevor's expression hardened again. "Doctor or not, I still think this card might be stolen." Johnson is a common name. "Anyone could—" "That's enough," Paul interrupted firmly. "The transaction is approved. The ID matches. There's no legitimate reason to hold up this purchase any further." Trevor ignored him, his finger hovering over the void transaction button on his register. "Store policy gives me the right to decline any transaction I find suspicious," he insisted. Maya felt a flash of alarm. She needed these baby supplies, and she'd already spent nearly an hour in the store selecting them. On what grounds could this possibly be suspicious? She asked, her composure finally starting to crack. The card is mine. The ID is mine. The transaction was approved. Just a feeling, Trevor said with a shrug. Can't be too careful these days. Lots of fraud going around. He pressed the void button before anyone could stop him. The register beeped and displayed transaction voided in large red letters. A collective gasp went up from the onlookers who had been watching the scene unfold. Lily, who had been standing nearby, rushed over to another register. I can ring you up at my station, ma'am, she offered urgently. No, you can't, Trevor barked. I've made a decision as assistant manager. This transaction has been declined. He turned to Maya with cold eyes. You'll need to leave the store now. Maya stood perfectly still, one hand on her cart, the other still holding her phone. The baby kicked sharply inside her, responding to her stress. She took a deep breath, focusing on staying calm for her child's sake. Let me understand this correctly, she said, her voice quiet but clear. You're refusing to sell me these items even though my payment was approved? Based on a feeling. That's right, Trevor confirmed, crossing his arms over his chest. Would you have this same feeling if I were white? Maya asked directly. Trevor's face flushed again. This has nothing to do with race. Stop playing the race card. The crowd of onlookers had grown larger. Murmurs of disapproval rippled through them. Someone in the back called out, This is discrimination, plain and simple. Paul, the security guard, looked increasingly distressed. Trevor, you need to reconsider this. The lady's payment was approved. There's no legitimate reason. I don't need to explain myself to you, Trevor snapped. I'm the assistant manager here. My decision is final. He turned back to Maya. Now, are you going to leave voluntarily or do I need to have security escort you out? Maya looked at Paul, who seemed deeply uncomfortable with this directive. I don't think he wants to do that, she observed quietly. Then I'll call the police, Trevor threatened, reaching for the store phone. A flash of genuine fear went through Maya. As a black woman, even one with professional credentials, she knew how quickly police involvement could escalate a situation, especially when the person who called them was already painting her as disruptive and potentially fraudulent. Her hand instinctively moved to her belly, protective of the life inside. The older woman who had been helping her stepped forward. You call the police and I'll be the first one to tell them exactly what happened here, she said firmly. I've got a son on the force, Officer Daniel Taylor. You know him? Trevor hesitated, his hand on the phone. Lily spoke up again, her voice shaking but determined. I've texted Mr. Reynolds, he's on his way down. You did what? Trevor's face contorted with anger. This has gone too far, Lily said. You can fire me if you want, but I won't stand by and watch this. Maya felt a wave of gratitude for these strangers standing up for her. She turned to address the growing crowd. I appreciate everyone's support. My husband will be here any minute. He was parking the car and should be walking in soon. Trevor scoffed again. The mysterious husband, right? Well, when this imaginary man shows up... Excuse me, a deep voice interrupted from behind the gathered crowd. Is there a problem here? The crowd parted, revealing a tall man in a crisp white coat with a hospital ID badge clipped to the pocket. His face was etched with concern as he took in the scene. Maya standing by the register with her phone still recording. Trevor behind the counter with a defiant expression. The security guard looking uncomfortable. And the crowd of onlookers watching intently. James, Maya said, relief flooding her voice. Thank goodness you're here. Dr. James Johnson made his way to his wife's side, placing a protective arm around her shoulders. What's going on? He asked, looking from Maya to Trevor with a questioning expression. Trevor's face went through a rapid series of emotions. Disbelief, shock, and then something that looked almost like fear as he took in James's professional appearance and the obvious respect he commanded just by walking into the room. Your timing couldn't be better, Maya said to her husband, her voice steady once more. I was just about to show you what it's like to shop while black in this store. James Johnson surveyed the scene with the careful attention of someone accustomed to assessing critical situations. His eyes moved from his wife's face to her phone still recording, to the voided transaction on the register screen, to the gathered crowd of onlookers, and finally to Trevor, whose expression had transformed from arrogant to uncertain in the span of seconds. Maya, James said quietly. Are you all right? His hand remained protectively on her shoulder, but his demeanor was calm and measured. I'm okay, Maya assured him, though the slight tremor in her voice suggested otherwise. Just a little stressed, which isn't good for the baby. James nodded, his concern visible. Why don't you tell me what happened here? He kept his voice level, but there was an undercurrent of authority that made everyone listen. Perhaps we could discuss this privately, Trevor interrupted, his tone suddenly professional and conciliatory. There's no need to make a scene in front of all these customers. James raised an eyebrow but didn't look away from Maya. I asked my wife a question, he said simply. Waiting for her response, Maya took a deep breath. I came in to buy these baby supplies and ask about setting up a registry. This man, she nodded toward Trevor, refused to help me, made comments about my type always wanting special treatment, suggested I couldn't afford these items, questioned whether I knew who my baby's father was, and then voided my transaction even though my card was approved. James's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in his eyes. Anyone who knew him well, as Maya did, recognized the controlled anger building beneath his professional exterior. I see, he said, his voice still measured. And you recorded this? Most of it, Maya confirmed, lifting her phone slightly. It started after his first few comments. James nodded once, then finally turned to face Trevor directly. Sir, may I have your name and position here? Trevor straightened his posture, seemingly trying to match James's professional demeanor. Trevor Wilkins, assistant manager. Thank you, Mr. Wilkins, James said with formal politeness. I'm Dr. James Johnson, Chief of Neurosurgery at Memorial Hospital. He didn't offer his hand. I'd like to understand why you felt it appropriate to speak to my wife in the manner she described, and why you voided a legitimate transaction. Trevor swallowed visibly. There's been a misunderstanding. Your wife seems to have interpreted some standard customer service interactions as something else. He glanced nervously at the crowd. We're very busy today, and sometimes customers take it personally when we can't provide one-on-one attention. Busy? James echoed, glancing pointedly around the nearly empty customer service area. And which part of suggesting my wife doesn't know who her baby's father is would you classify as standard customer service? Trevor's face flushed. I never said that. She's twisting my words. I have it recorded, Maya reminded him quietly, holding up her phone. James nodded. I'd like to hear it. This isn't necessary, Trevor protested. If your wife wants to complete her purchase, I can reprocess the transaction now. Let's just move past this unfortunate misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. The older woman who had been helping Maya spoke up. I heard everything this young man said, clear as day. Been shopping here 30 years and never seen anything like it. Several other customers murmured in agreement. Lily, still standing nearby, nodded vigorously. Where's the store manager? James asked, addressing no one in particular. I'm here, a voice called from the back of the crowd. The group parted to reveal a middle-aged man in a shirt and tie hurrying toward them. His name tag identified him as David Reynolds, store manager. Mr. Reynolds, James greeted him with a nod. My name is Dr. James Johnson. My wife, Dr. Maya Johnson, has experienced what appears to be racial discrimination from your assistant manager here today. She has video evidence of his comments and actions. David Reynolds looked distressed as he took in the scene, the crowd of customers, the security guard standing awkwardly to the side, Lily's anxious expression, Trevor's defensive posture, and the Johnsons standing calmly at the center of it all. I am deeply sorry to hear that, Reynolds said, sounding genuinely troubled. Value Mart has a strict non-discrimination policy. We take these matters extremely seriously. I'm glad to hear it, James replied, because what happened here today was unacceptable by any standard. Trevor stepped forward. Mr. Reynolds, this is being blown way out of proportion. I was simply following store policies regarding suspicious transactions. There was nothing suspicious about my transaction, Maya interrupted firmly. My card was approved. You voided it anyway. Reynolds turned to Trevor with a sharp look. You voided an approved transaction? I had concerns about potential fraud, Trevor insisted, but his voice had lost its earlier confidence. Based on what evidence? Reynolds pressed. Trevor hesitated. Just instinct, experience. The card didn't seem right. The card worked fine, Paul, the security guard, interjected. The system approved it. There were no red flags. Reynolds' expression grew more severe. Trevor, step into my office now. He turned back to the Johnsons. Dr. and Dr. Johnson, I would very much appreciate if you would join us as well, so we can address this properly. He glanced at Maya's cart. And of course, we'll ensure you get all your items at a significant discount for the inconvenience. This isn't about a discount, James said quietly. This is about dignity and respect, Reynolds nodded soberly. I understand. Please come with me. As they began to move toward the manager's office, Trevor suddenly balked. I don't think this is necessary. I have other customers to help. Lily can cover the desk, Reynolds said firmly. This takes priority. Maya turned to the crowd before following. Thank you all for your support, she said sincerely. Especially you, she added, looking at the older woman who had stood by her side. The woman patted Maya's arm. You take care of that baby, honey, and make sure they do right by you. James guided Maya toward the manager's office, his hand steady at the small of her back. Trevor trudged behind them, followed by Reynolds, who paused to speak quietly with Lily before catching up. The manager's office was small but neat, with 2 visitor chairs facing a desk cluttered with paperwork and a computer. Reynolds quickly pulled in extra chairs from an adjacent room. Please sit down, he said, gesturing to the Johnsons. Dr. Maya Johnson, I want to start by saying how deeply sorry I am for what you experienced in our store today. Maya nodded but remained silent, one hand resting on her belly. Trevor stood awkwardly by the door until Reynolds pointed firmly to a chair. Sit down, Trevor. Once they were all seated, Reynolds folded his hands on his desk. Dr. Johnson, would you be willing to show me the recording you made? Maya nodded and pulled up the video on her phone. She handed it to Reynolds, who watched it with an increasingly troubled expression. James kept his eyes on Trevor, who stared at the floor, avoiding eye contact with anyone. The office was silent except for the audio from the phone. Trevor's voice making comments about your type and probably don't even know who the father is, followed by his insistence that Maya's card looked suspicious and his ultimatum that she leave the store. When the video ended, Reynolds handed the phone back to Maya with a grim expression. Thank you, he said quietly. He turned to Trevor. Is there anything you'd like to say for yourself? Trevor shifted in his seat. It wasn't as bad as it sounds. The recording doesn't show how she was being difficult before that. Difficult how? James asked, his voice dangerously calm. Just asking a lot of questions, taking up time, Trevor muttered. About a registry program your store offers, Maya pointed out. That's hardly being difficult. Reynolds sighed heavily. Trevor, I've known you for 3 years. I gave you the assistant manager position because I thought you had potential. But what I just saw in that video, he shook his head. It violates everything this company stands for. It was just a bad day, Trevor protested weakly. Everyone says things they don't mean sometimes. The things you said weren't just offensive, James said quietly. They were specifically targeted at my wife because of her race. That's not having a bad day. That's revealing who you truly are. Trevor's face flushed again. That's not fair. I'm not racist. I have black friends. The room fell silent at the cliché. Maya and James exchanged a glance that spoke volumes. Reynolds cleared his throat. Trevor, I need your store keys and badge. You're suspended effective immediately, pending a full investigation. But I think we both know where this is heading. Trevor's eyes widened. You're firing me over this? That's not right. What's not right is how you treated a customer in our store, Reynolds replied firmly. Keys and badge, please. Trevor hesitated, then slowly removed his name badge and unclipped a set of keys from his belt loop. He placed them on the desk with a shaking hand. This isn't fair, he repeated, but with less conviction. Trevor, you questioned whether my wife knew who her child's father was based solely on the color of her skin, James said evenly. You suggested her credit card was fraudulent despite system approval. You voided a legitimate transaction and threatened to call police. Which part of that do you feel was fair to her? Trevor had no answer. Reynolds stood up. You can collect your personal belongings under supervision, and then you need to leave the premises. HR will be in touch about next steps. As Trevor rose to leave, he gave Maya one last resentful glance. James noticed and shifted slightly in his chair, his protective instinct visible. I'm sorry you felt offended, Trevor said. The non-apology directed at no one in particular. That's not an apology, James observed quietly. I don't think Mr. Wilkins is in a place to offer a genuine apology right now, Reynolds said diplomatically. Paul will escort you to collect your things, Trevor. The security guard, who had been waiting outside, opened the door and gestured for Trevor to follow him. Without another word, Trevor left the office, his shoulders slumped in defeat. When the door closed behind him, Reynolds turned back to the Johnsons with a deeply apologetic expression. "I cannot begin to express how sorry I am for what happened today. This does not represent our values as a company or as a store." Reynolds leaned forward in his chair, his expression genuinely troubled. "What happened today goes against everything we claim to stand for as a company. I've been manager here for 8 years, and this is, well, frankly, it's my worst nightmare." Maya and James exchanged a glance, neither rushing to ease the manager's discomfort. "The thing is," Reynolds continued, "we can have all the policies and training in the world, but it comes down to the people we hire and how we supervise them." He rubbed his forehead. "I failed there. I should have seen the signs with Trevor." "Were there signs?" James asked quietly. Reynolds hesitated. "Nothing this explicit, but yes, there were complaints, comments that could be interpreted different ways. I spoke to him about his customer service approach twice before, but I chalked it up to him being abrupt with everyone." He shook his head. "I should have dug deeper." "That's often how it works," Maya said, her voice professional but tired. "Racism doesn't always announce itself with slurs and obvious attacks. Sometimes it's in patterns that people don't want to see." Reynolds nodded soberly. "You're absolutely right, Dr. Johnson, and I apologize for not seeing those patterns sooner." He straightened in his chair. "Now what can we do to make this right for you today?" "I still need these baby supplies," Maya said simply. "That was the whole point of coming here." "Of course," Reynolds nodded quickly. "I'd like to offer them to you at no charge as a small gesture." "That's not necessary," James interrupted. "We don't want free items. We just want to be treated with the same respect as any other customer." Reynolds looked relieved. "I understand. How about this? Lily is one of our best employees. She's actually trained in our registry program. I'd like her to help you complete your purchase and set up your registry if you're still interested." Maya considered this. "That would be fine," she agreed. "And I'd like to offer a genuine apology, not just from the store, but from me personally," Reynolds added. "This happened on my watch." Maya nodded, accepting his words. "Thank you." Reynolds hesitated before asking, "May I ask what you plan to do with the recording?" James and Maya exchanged another look. "We haven't decided yet," James answered honestly. "Our first priority was addressing the immediate situation." "I completely understand," Reynolds said. "Whatever you decide, the company will accept responsibility. I've already texted our district manager and she'll be calling you personally." He wrote down a name and number on a business card and slid it across the desk. "This is her direct line. And this," he wrote on another card, "is mine. Day or night if you have any questions or concerns." Maya took the cards and placed them in her purse. "Thank you." "There's one more thing," Reynolds said. "The other customers who witnessed what happened, several of them asked if you were okay. The community here, they didn't stand with Trevor. They stood with you. I think that's important to acknowledge." Maya felt unexpected emotion rise in her throat. Throughout the confrontation, she had maintained her composure, focusing on documenting the injustice rather than reacting to it. But Reynolds's words, the reminder that strangers had shown up for her, brought a rush of feeling. "That did mean a lot," she admitted softly. James placed his hand over hers. "Ready to finish our shopping?" he asked gently. Maya nodded and began to rise from her chair. The baby chose that moment to deliver a particularly strong kick, and she placed a hand on her belly, smiling faintly. "Everything okay?" James asked, immediately concerned. "Fine," Maya assured him. "Just someone expressing an opinion about all this excitement." Reynolds walked them back to the sales floor where Lily was waiting, Maya's cart of baby supplies beside her. The crowd had dispersed, though a few customers lingered nearby, offering supportive smiles as the Johnsons emerged from the office. The older woman who had stood by Maya approached. "You all right, honey?" she asked. "Yes, thank you," Maya replied warmly. "Thank you for staying," the woman nodded. "Gotta look out for each other. My name's Eleanor, by the way. Been shopping here since before this young man was born." She gestured to Reynolds, who smiled sheepishly. "Never had trouble before and better not have any after, right?" She fixed Reynolds with a stern look. "No, ma'am, absolutely not," Reynolds assured her quickly. Eleanor patted Maya's arm. "You take care of that little one. And if you need anything, A home-cooked meal after the baby comes or just someone to talk to? My daughter owns the bakery across the street. Eleanor's sweet shop, come find me. Maya felt tears threaten again. Thank you, Eleanor. I might take you up on that. With Eleanor's blessing, Lily guided the Johnsons to her register. I'm so sorry about everything that happened, she said as she began scanning the items properly. I should have spoken up sooner. You did speak up, Maya reminded her. You called the manager. That was brave, considering Trevor was your supervisor. Lily shrugged modestly. It was the right thing to do. I just wish I'd done it faster. She finished scanning the items and processed Maya's payment without incident. Then she moved to a computer terminal. Now about that registry, if you're still interested. For the next 20 minutes, Lily expertly guided Maya through setting up a baby registry, explaining the benefits and answering all her questions. James stood beside his wife, occasionally adding items he thought they might need. The process was exactly what Maya had hoped for when she first approached the customer service desk hours earlier. When they finished, Lily printed out registry cards and information sheets, placing them in a folder with the ValueMart logo. Your registry is all set up. Friends and family can access it online or in any store. And don't forget the completion discount after your baby shower. Thank you, Lily, Maya said sincerely. You've been wonderful. James loaded the bags into their cart while Maya tucked the registry information into her purse. As they prepared to leave, Reynolds approached once more. Again, I'm truly sorry for your experience today, he said. I'll be implementing changes to make sure nothing like this happens again. I hope so, James replied. Because next time the person might not have a doctor husband or the confidence to record what's happening. They might just leave feeling humiliated and you'd never know what you lost. Reynolds nodded soberly. You're absolutely right. Thank you for that perspective. Maya and James left the store, the automatic doors sliding open to reveal a bright afternoon. The stress of the confrontation had exhausted Maya, and she leaned slightly against James as they walked to their car. You were amazing in there, James said quietly. So strong. I didn't feel strong, Maya admitted. I felt vulnerable and angry and tired all at once. That's what makes it even more impressive, James said, squeezing her hand. You stood your ground anyway. They loaded the bags into the trunk of their car, and James insisted on returning the cart while Maya rested in the passenger seat. As she waited, Maya's phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had messaged her on social media, Lily from the store. The message read, Dr. Johnson, I hope it's okay that I found you here. I wanted you to know that after you left, Mr. Reynolds called a mandatory staff meeting. He played parts of your video with your face blurred as an example of what will never be tolerated. 3 other employees shared similar experiences they'd had with Trevor. Changes are already happening. Thank you for standing up. Maya stared at the message, processing what it meant. James opened the driver's door and slid in beside her. Everything okay? He asked, noticing her expression. Maya showed him the message. It made a difference, she said softly. James read it and nodded. Of course it did. You made a difference. 1 week later, Maya received an official letter from ValueMart's regional director. It contained a formal apology, confirmation of Trevor's termination, and details of new diversity training being implemented across all stores. The letter also mentioned that Maya's recording, with her permission and identity protected, would be used in future training sessions. After discussing it with James, Maya gave her consent. 2 weeks after that, she received another letter. This one from a group of ValueMart employees, including Lily and Paul, the security guard. They thanked her for bringing the issue to light and explained how the work environment had improved since Trevor's departure. Maya pinned both letters to the bulletin board in her home office, next to the ultrasound picture of her baby. 3 months later, when baby Zoe Johnson made her entrance into the world, 2 weeks early but perfectly healthy, one of the first gifts to arrive was a beautiful hand-knitted blanket. The card read simply, for the little one who helped change things for the better. With love, Eleanor. Maya wrapped her daughter in the soft blanket, thinking about the day at ValueMart. She had gone there to prepare for Zoe's arrival, never expecting to fight a battle against discrimination. Yet somehow, through standing firm in her dignity, she had created a small ripple of change. As she rocked her daughter to sleep, Maya whispered a promise. The world isn't perfect, little one. Sometimes it's going to be hard, But never let anyone make you feel small. You matter. Your voice matters. And sometimes speaking up changes things not just for you, but for everyone who comes after you. Zoe yawned and curled her tiny fingers around her mother's thumb, unaware of the legacy she had already helped create. A legacy of courage, accountability, and the simple but profound demand to be treated with human dignity. In her own small way, before she was even born, Zoe Johnson had already made the world a little better,